Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. We continue with our player profiles now that the 2024-2025 season has come to a conclusion. Zion, Trey in the books. Our thanks to Will Guillory. Now Andrew Lopez steps in. We will hear from him as he discusses CJ McCollum in this one particularly. But Jim Eichenhofer, Pelicans.com, in here with me as well. On Tuesday, a very big moment here in the franchise as Joe Dumars was introduced as the new EVP, Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations. And, you know, he had a lot to say, and it was our first chance to hear, I guess, his vision and where we're going to go moving forward here, as it's going to be a very busy offseason. Again, May 12th is the draft lottery. We'll find out where the Pels pick at that point. End of June is the NBA draft, and so forth and so on. You get ready for the new season. So, Jim, overall, Mr. Dumars is up there. What stood out to you, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, he was exactly what I expected him to be. I've seen him give interviews before. I've seen him speak about basketball and a bunch of different topics. Obviously, he was in the league office the last few years and did a bunch of interviews for national podcasts and different shows. But, I mean, I feel like the way I would describe his speaking tone and his approach is it's very much the way he was when he was a player. He's just one of those guys that's just very rock solid, steady, reliable player, and it's kind of the way he is. He doesn't say a lot of flashy stuff. It's just kind of, you know, he's kind of a dependable guy, and you know, you're not going to get a ton of quotes that you're going to put up on websites or in tweets and stuff like that. But he's just more about my actions are so much more important than what I'm going to say up here.
No doubt. I think one of the things that is going to be interesting is getting all the information as to what are the things that he needs to work on. What are the things that really he has in place, Jim? And I think that's one of the things he was asked yesterday, and it's something that you've stressed. If healthy, this team has talent, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, you know, we talked about this in the last offseason that if you go by ESPN.com or you go by The Ringer, when they put their top 100 players list out there, going into last season, the Pelicans had 6 guys in the top 100. That may have changed a little bit. Obviously, Brandon Ingram isn't here anymore, and he was one of those 6 players. But, I mean, nonetheless, this is a team that has talent and has pieces to build around. I mean, the 3 seasons before this past season that we just endured, they either made the play-in or they made the playoffs all 3 of those years. They had a winning record the 2 seasons before this past one. So, I mean, there's a little bit of a track record. This isn't a team that has been at the bottom of the league the way some of the other teams that have a high percentage in the lottery are. They definitely are an outlier if you look at them compared to, you know, the 3 teams that finished with a worse record than they did.
No doubt. Well, here's what Joe had to say about the core of the team and how he feels about it.
I like the core here. I think there's some really good young pieces here. I think that there's a fan base. If you win in New Orleans, I think everybody in this room knows, you start winning in New Orleans, people are going to come out, man, in droves. And so I know that this was, first of all, an incredible fan base. Secondly, for me at this point in my career, ownership of where I work was of paramount importance. And so coming here and working for Ms. Benson, coming here and looking at the core of who's here. I've been knowing Willie since he was at Cooley High in Detroit. And so I just thought all those things together, for me personally, it was just like, this is the right fit. This is perfect right here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cupboard is not bare here, even though, you know, that's something that I touched on a little bit a second ago. This is not a job where you're coming in and saying, like, man, there's really no resources here. There's no talent. I'm going to have to figure out how do I go from where we are right now to a team that can compete?
It's not a start from scratch job.
Right. I mean, if you compare, not to single them out, but if you look at Washington's situation, maybe not right now, but if you go back a year ago, that Washington job is the kind of thing where it's like you really don't have any pieces at all that you can build around. They added some guys in the draft. They had, the number 2 pick in the draft, Alex Sarr. They had a couple other guys that they added in the first round this year. But it's like you're kind of it's almost like you're not even at step 1. You're kind of at step 0 if you take a job like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think one of the things that Dumars referenced was just the fact that there are, he said he likes the young core and the young pieces that they have here. It's definitely the case where you have some of the plenty of raw materials to work with. Now it's a matter of how do I tweak this? How do I round out the edges? How do I improve the way that everything fits together to get better results? Another thing I thought of, too, when he was talking about how there weren't that many opportunities that could take him from the job that he was in New York City. I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, and it's impossible to get in someone else's head, but
sure.
To me, the NBA front office job is like you're kind of the 24 hours a day bad guy. You're the guy that's administering the punishments,
True.
the fines. And it's kind of similar to the job of a referee. The only thing that can happen is for people to ignore that's a good day. A good day is no one said anything mean about you. No one was angry and furious. So, I mean, to me, running an NBA team is a much more, I'll speak for myself. It just seems like so much more of an appealing job than working for the league office. Because I think at the end of the day, when you work for the league office, there really aren't any wins. There's just not losses.
Sure.
Whereas when you run an NBA team, obviously, there's just a bunch of things that everyone's working towards the same goal. Everyone wants to be a playoff team. Everybody wants to eventually be a championship team. There's not really a championship carrot if you're working in New York City for the league office. You're just trying to make sure you're putting out fires. You're making sure that people are not, cursing you under their breath or over their breath all the time. I think this job is just something that seems a lot more attractive, I guess.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, and maybe it's for a later show as we get closer to the season, but him working, as he said, with all of the teams and seeing how they operate and how they handle certain situations, it's not a bad thing, Jim. You kind of have a little sneak peek behind the curtain as to how teams handle and the trouble spots and somewhere else. So I think it'll be interesting, too, when it comes to maybe making moves or having communications and relationships with other front offices and other decision makers. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, the league is ever changing. So to be constantly monitoring how all 30 teams are operating is definitely something that's helpful. I mean, there's two kind of unprecedented. There's 2 head coaches that got fired in the last 10 games of the season, which is not something that we've seen before. So, yeah, I mean, I think having some insight, maybe having some behind-the-scenes analysis or observations of the way different teams operate and being able to look at, okay, this is something that I want to copy or this is something that I totally want to avoid. Maybe I don't want to let the coach go with 3 games left in the season or whatever your opinion is of that. I think those are things that are helpful to have that perspective.
And, Jim, those are 2 teams that are in the postseason right now, in Memphis and in Denver, particularly with that. One of the other things that stood out, too, and again, not to put words in people's mouths, but obviously when you make a change at EVP, there's a different voice, right? A different vision, or just something wants to go in a different direction. So one of the things that he was asked yesterday was, what is that vision? What is that voice? And I guess what that identity is going to be. And you and I talk about it all the time. Who are the Pels? What are the Pels? What are they going to be? What are they going to hang their hat on? And you kind of got a glimpse yesterday from Mr. Dumars about, hey, this is, at the very least, the foundation, the ground level piece of what we're going to build this house on, per se, if we're using construction.
Yeah, that's the standards that you set as an organization. Like you have to set standards, and you can't waver from those standards. They can't be like the first week of the season, that here's the standard, and as the season goes on, things slowly start changing. That's not championship. That's not contending. That's not elite basketball. That's not elite anything when you allow things to just slide. And so it's just setting standards early on, and then you have to hold to that and hold everybody accountable to that. I think this, Fletcher, too. I think, and I had this conversation with Ms. Benson yesterday. Actually, we were talking about how you raise kids, right? And so but I think this is true about teams too. I can say anything I want to say. I can come in here and I can rattle off this, and this. But people have to see you live it every day. Like championship culture, like you're talking about playing into June every year. I can assure you, Fletcher, that is not this. You're not going to be up one day. They have to see you come in like a rock every day. And they have to know, we lost last night, we won last night, doesn't matter. Like this organization, we're going to do things the right way, and we're not going to waver from that. And I think culture is what you see every day when you come in. It can't fluctuate from day to day. It can't fluctuate from win to loss. That's what culture is, and that's how you get there. That's how you get to playing in June every year.
Yeah, by the way, Gus, I think the baby wanted to ask a few questions. There was a kind of an ongoing conversation going on during Joe's talk, but I think that's a family member. Maybe that youngster just was, kind of happy to hear a family member talk and just wanted to kind of converse back and forth. So
no doubt.
I thought that part was funny. But yeah, I think, going back to what he talked about there, I mean, I think it's just another one of those things where it's like, it sounds weird to say this during a press conference or after a press conference, but it's like he's basically saying that talk doesn't really matter that much. You can put out a bunch of slogans. You can say, okay, this is what we're all about, but it doesn't matter what you say you're about. It's about you proving that day in and day out. I mean, it doesn't take very long for people to see through, if you're talking a big game, but you're not backing it up, if you're not following through on all the things that you say that you're about. So I like that part of it as well. It's just one of those things where it's like, it doesn't really matter what we say in April. When you start training camp and you start the preseason and you have to set, okay, this is the way that we're going to operate and these are the things that you're going to adhere to. And if on the third day the players are like, oh, wait, I guess we're not adhering to this, it doesn't really matter what you spent the previous 5 or 6 months talking about. Yeah,
no doubt. And it's understanding what teams like San Antonio have done for a while, right? Miami Heat, that culture and things of that nature established at practice. And look, we're kind of seeing right now the newest incarnation, at least in my mind, of OKC. Like, when you see them on a calendar, it's coming, right? I mean, they're going to be strong defensively.
Yep.
You look at their post-game interviews, Jim, it's a family. They're all one another, and it's led by SGA. I mean, sometimes they're kidding too much, and he takes the jacket off the sideline reporter, and they dressed him up like Mario and whatever from Super Nintendo. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? It's like he's the guy. He lets them have fun, but there's work to be done, and I think that's something that it'll be interesting and exciting to see. But we got a lot to get into when it comes to him and this offseason of moves that the Pels are going to be making here. But today we're going to focus on CJ McCollum. So we brought in the sideline reporter for the Gulf Coast Sports Entertainment Network, Mr. Andrew Lopez, and here's our conversation about El Presidente. All right, time now to welcome in Pelicans sideline reporter, Mr. Andrew Lopez. Sir, we're going to break down a couple of players here. You Drew Strauss, CJ McCollum, and Herb Jones. So we'll start with CJ, who had a very interesting season this year.
Can I start with something I learned about somebody in this room recently?
What's that?
Well, CJ is Christian James.
Okay.
Did you know Jim was James Christian?
I did not know that.
Yes, very interesting fact. Yep. Named
That's
after
why he has 17 CJ McCollum jerseys.
And that is why you're the. That sounded like an honest to goodness sideline report in the game. Like Joe Myers goes, "Let's go to Andrew Lopez. He's got some information," and then you literally just did that.
It would have been the worst sideline report of the season, I think. I don't think I saw all of Andrew's work this year, but I saw most of it. I think that would have been bottom tier. But I appreciate the reference.
I thought that was very interesting. That was all.
Again, it sounded like a legit, honest to goodness sideline report that you would have heard this year on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. First year in the books for you, man. What was it like?
It was fun. It was really fun, man. Learned a lot from Joel, learned a lot from AD and from our whole crew and just kind of navigating things. Obviously, nobody wanted the season to go the way it was, but doing that and the hosting and being able to host and at these home games and have all these fans behind us and do that for every game, that has been, just a joy overall to watch and see. So very excited, gearing up for year 2 and seeing what we could do to make this better.
Another random fact related to the Eichenhofer family, Andrew, for your Christmas games where you were hosting, you had several of my family members behind you. I never told you that, but yes, another.
See?
Yeah, you had a bunch of people jumping up and down. My sister-in-law was back there, my niece, etc. Cast of thousands. Besides CJ's excellence in being named the way he was, I wanted, part of what we wanted to bring in a bunch of people that have been around the team all season is we kind of wanted to start with just some insight on each player's kind of background. Like you obviously were around the team the entire season. You travel all the games. I think people know that CJ is one of those guys that really spends he's a very introspective guy. He's a very kind of analytical guy. How would you describe just kind of his approach to the game and just your experience of being around him, probably the most you have been in the time that you've been covering this team going back a bunch of years?
Very methodical. Very, very methodical. He goes about things a certain way the whole time. And he has his routines, which have changed some as he is, embraced fatherhood and how, he's even mentioned sometimes how he'll, get the kids to go down with his wife and then show up over here for late night sessions, trying to, get some shots up and do things like that. Working with AJ Diggs, his guy, and doing a whole bunch of work. And I think what he does is he has to kind of have that routine. And it's one reason why he has scored 20, average 20 points a game for 10 consecutive seasons. That doesn't happen by accident. And when you look at it, he's not just consecutively, but there's only been 37 guys so far. And there's quite a few in the nines that can jump up, the Giannis's, the Devin Bookers, the Joels, Cat, all these kind of guys who can then jump up and do it. But only 37 players in NBA history have averaged 20 points a game for 10 seasons, period. He's done it consecutively. Here are some of the names who have not done it. Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, Alex English, George Gervin, some of these guys, Blake Griffin, Tracy McGrady, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Pete Maravich.
I'm sorry?
Pete Maravich. All of these guys have not done what CJ has done, and I think it speaks to a certain level of his professionalism and his ability to, when we call him a professional scorer, it's because that is what he does, and you see it in the work that he puts in.
Yeah. I love that stat. That's not one that I've heard before. You talk about his consistency and his reliability. I think that's a huge hallmark of what has made him a guy that teams want throughout his career. One of the things that stood out from this season, though, was he also had these monster performances, these individual games where, he had a 50-point game. He had a few other 40-plus point games. What was your takeaway from that? Just the fact that he was able to just go off basically whenever they needed him to.
It's kind of funny because I think he's now has, I believe it's 14 40-point games, and this is the most he's ever had in a season. He had 4, 3 40s and a 50. So, again, it just kind of shows you there were a lot of times this year that because of the way this season has gone, that he was needed to do a lot of things. The first 3 50s, I think, all happened within or 40s, I should say, happened within a 5-week stretch.
Yeah.
He had the Detroit game, which ended up being I believe his final game of the season. He had 40, but he had the 50 against Washington, the 45 against Utah, the 43 against Sacramento. 2 of those were overtime wins. The 50, I will say, I was a little upset at the 50. Because he did the 50 on the one home game I was not available for.
Oh.
So
I thought you were going to go, you were upset he didn't get the 51 because he missed the free throw there at the end.
He was upset he didn't get to 51. I think he said that.
Right.
Right, because his career high was his career high 50? Or is 50?
I think it was
50,
50.
Yeah, okay. So he would have had a new one.
I feel like I had a very good reason to miss that game.
Indeed.
Well,
Indeed.
you know.
My wife and my baby would say otherwise. But I was like, oh. I'm sitting at home that night. Mm-hmm. We're going to the hospital the next morning. And I was like, man, if they win this game, the Curse of Lopes people are really going to get loud.
It ended a losing streak, too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And he dropped 50. I was a little afraid to walk in the following week when I did get back to the arena.
Understandably.
You know, Andrew, I can't wait for, 15, 20 years from now when your daughter does something like she's late for something and you're upset at her and you can be like, and also, by the way, back in 2025, you realize you made me miss a 50-point game by CJ McCollum.
That's it.
And she'll probably look at you like you've lost your mind.
She's going to walk out. She's just going to turn around, leave.
But that's something that you can kind of hold. You can keep that in your back pocket and bring that out someday.
I'm going to use it at one point.
Definitely. One of the things that we're doing in each of these podcasts too is I'm going to give the guest 2 stats and from the player's season, and I want you to pick which one you like the best, and then we can kind of discuss
Let's go.
which. So by the numbers on CJ McCollum, I don't know if we call this Pella stats, what we're calling it, but we'll come up with something. The first number is 692, and that is how many career three-pointers that CJ has made with New Orleans, which is a franchise record. Trey Murphy has 600. He's third on the list. Drew Holiday, 628. The second number is 8, and that is the times in New Orleans team history that a player has made at least 9 threes in a game. Of those 8 times, CJ has 4 of them.
Ooh, I was going to guess 5 of them.
So maybe I should add some trivia to this as well.
I was going to say, yeah.
But Trey Murphy has 3, and then Peja has 1. So which of those 2 numbers do you like best, or which of them do you want to talk about? We could even talk about both if you want.
I'd like to talk about both, but let's start with the career mark because it's one of those numbers that jumps out at you because he's only been here for
3.5 seasons.
3.5 seasons, 223 games is what he's played. He hit that mark, I want to say around career game like 200-ish. It was like 199, 2.
Yep.
It was in that neighborhood. But it just goes to show you. I mean, since he's been here, he's hit basically 3 a game, a little bit more than that. And it's just he's been asked to do a lot. And when you look at his numbers, percentage-wise, it's funny what I'm about to say because he shot a career low from 3-point range this season at 37.3, which is still a number that most guys in the NBA, especially shooting 8 a game, would be like, I would love that. Previous low was like 37.5. He had done that twice in his career, but this is a guy who just last season, I should say, was 42.9. And obviously, you look at that 37.3, and he had to take a lot of tough shots.
Right.
Because, and he also had a lot of attention on him because of all of the injuries. And what you saw with, Trey not being on the floor, or DeJounte, or Herb, or Z, or whoever, a lot of attention was focused on him, and he probably took maybe some shots that even in 23-24 he's not taking.
Right. And
he still shot 37-something%.
Right.
I think it's a credit to him in the job. And again, going back to the professionalism and being a professional scorer of the work that he was able to do, that he was able to have that kind of season that other guys would love to have. There's a number of guys of the 450, 400 are probably, I would love that season, if not more.
Sure.
And it's like, meh, like, the way he had it. So, and I know that's something that he's probably like, nope, that number's got to get back up. I have to have a better season and kind of hold myself to that standard. This is a guy who is a 40% 3-point shooter in his career. When you shoot the ball like that, it is, you look at it and you go, yeah, it's probably, I could see how you're going to become a franchise's all-time leader in just 3.5 seasons.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, last thing for me, I mean, it would be interesting to hear his perspective too on that. I mean, he's very tied into the numbers. He's a very analytical guy. I'm sure that, I don't know, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm sure that he wanted to shoot 40% because that's kind of, I've heard him say before in previous seasons, he's when he goes through a slump or maybe he starts the season slowly, he's like, I know I'm going to be back at my usual number, right around 40. But I think you make a really good point, though, in terms of just he's not wide open. He was wide open way less this season than he was in the past. I think he was getting more of his shots were pull-ups. I mean, he's really good at that too, but I think almost pretty much every shooter, if they get those wide open catch and shoots, ball swung to you, nobody's around, your percentage is going to be higher. So, but I mean, that brings me to the last thing for me is, so I mean, just going forward, I mean, obviously he's not gonna drastically change his game this far into his career. I think this was his 12th season in the NBA. I mean, what do you look for him now? Is it just a matter of, you hope the team gets healthy, you get him back to that role of where he's making wide open shots and he's just in a position. I mean, I thought he had a really good year as it was, especially under the circumstances, but I would think that he would benefit a ton from us never having a season like what we just experienced.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to benefit from us never having a season like that. But two more numbers that just kind of stuck out to me is, sometimes when you talk about a guy who, to use a football reference, when Mike Evans got 1,000 yards for how many consecutive seasons it was, he had like 4 or 5 seasons where he was right above 1,000. Whether it was, catching it the last game or 10-50, whatever he was. There haven't been many years where CJ has like just eked over 20 points a game. 23-24 Pels, he had 20.0. But he was averaging 21 in a game this year while being the focal point at 33 years old. We were looking at, I think he was like, at one point, I think he was 6 in the NBA among 33 and up players behind the guys, the guys you would expect. But you saw him adapt his game. And one thing you saw was he shot 50.5% on twos this year, which is only the 5th time in his career he's been over 50 on twos. 50.5, his career high is 50.9. So he's almost right there. So you saw him kind of adjust his game a little bit, whether it was getting to that floater, getting a little mid-range going. And I think that kind of speaks to CJ McCollum is he is going to find ways to score the basketball. And when you have a healthy lineup around him, and he is not, it's not all eyes on him or, and no discredit to the other guys that have played this year, but they weren't established threats the way a CJ, a Trey, a Z, a Herb, a DeJounte are. And so when defenses are able to key in on him a little bit more, and for him still to be able to come out and score 21.1, I think it's just a credit to who he is, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he can do once he shakes off some injuries as well, and is around a healthy roster.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things, right, as we wrap up here, Andrew, it's about, since Zion's been here and really the last 5-6 years or so, it's fits, who fits here, who fits there, and all those different aspects of it. I think what we saw is a player that continues to adapt, a player that's professional, and a player that if I read, basically what they want this team to be moving forward, he's a foundational piece.
When you listen to Willie Green talk about CJ and what he brings, the on the court, the off the court, he's that guy that you want. And, sometimes having the PA president is a good thing in your locker room, but it's the guy who has worked himself into being the type of leader that he can be, the taking guys to dinner and all this kind of stuff. And that's just a small part, but the knowledge that he, has given these guys goes a long way.
Final thing for you, he's an entrepreneur, right? I mean, he has his own wine company.
Oh, yeah.
You're daddy now. Applesauces, things like maybe a baby line. Yeah. Ooh. Could you help?
Think that we might have to talk.
Little joint partnership there for the Lopez baby line. I mean, Gerber's done really well as a
I'm gonna go. All right, you guys finish up. I'm gonna go. I gotta go call CJ. I'm out of here.
There it is for sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Andrew Lopez.
Thank you.
All right, our thanks to Andrew Lopez, CJ McCollum, Jim. Did you think he's going to have a couple of 40-point games and 50-point games?
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, the thing about that, though,
because he started so slow, but you kept saying he's not this bad a shooter. It's going to come around. You told us this at the beginning of the season.
And I think when I say I wasn't expecting him to have, for example, a 50-point game. It's really not any reflection on him at all. It's more just that, like, you don't need him. Going into the season, you're not thinking, like, man, if CJ doesn't get 45 tonight, we have no chance to win. If CJ doesn't get 50, it's just unfortunate that what led to that, of course, was all the injuries and him being in a situation where it was like there were nights, even against some of the lower level teams of the league, where he had to go wild for them to be able to pull off a victory.
All right, well, Jim, during the regular season, we like to do Western Conference Wednesdays on Wednesdays to give us a handful of different things to go into it. Not as many, but we will do a Western Conference Wednesday bit.
Yeah, I'm going to just go briefly through a couple points from the playoffs so far in the Western Conference. It's been, about 4 days of games, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Just a couple bullet points so far. Best series so far in the Western Conference has been the Clippers and the Nuggets. Right now, through 2 games, it's Clippers 2-15, Nuggets 2-14. So, I mean, that should tell you how close it's been. The first game of that series went into overtime. It's been so fun watching Kawhi get back to the level where he was when he was in his prime, maybe like 5-6 years ago before he started having a lot of injury issues, and him battling against Jokic, the player that he is. Worst series so far. OKC has outscored Memphis by 70 through the first 2 games. Memphis's big 3 of Jackson, Morant, and Bane, all of them have shot 40% or worse from the field so far. So that one has been rough. And then last thing, the biggest question of the Western Conference playoffs to me so far is, who are the real Timberwolves? They made 21 3-pointers in game 1, shot 50% from downtown in that game, and then they only made 5 in game 2 against the Lakers and lost pretty convincingly. So the question going forward, going into the upcoming games they play Friday and Sunday back in Minneapolis, is which of those Timberwolves teams will show up, because I think that's going to dictate what happens. And it's just they've been definitely the most Jekyll and Hyde team, I think, of the entire playoff so far. So that is the abbreviated Western Conference Wednesday for the first week of the playoffs.
I love it. There's so much fun to be watching in these postseasons. Obviously, you would love the Pels to be in there, but I was on there. They got it to within 10. I'm like, come on, team.
Yeah. And by the way, too, speaking of the Pelicans in the playoffs, what's happened so far in OKC versus Memphis has also, they've made last year's first round sweep of the Thunder versus the Pelicans look like a extremely competitive series. I mean, that was nothing compared to what the Thunder are doing to the Grizzlies right now.
In 10 seconds here, because it's behind your head on the TV, right? Screaming A.
Am I not supposed to look? Or
No, I mean, it's the, Screaming A saying they need more from LeBron for the Lakers. And I get it. I get it. That's a talking point. Look, I even asked you earlier this week, is Steph the guy to look at what he's doing with Golden State? And they'll be playing the Rockets here again this week. But I get it. They're not the team that everyone wants to talk about, but OKC's darn good, aren't they? Maybe it's just what they are. I mean, last year what they did with the Pels, they're a really good defensive team. And Jim, now they can score. And that's a team that maybe in a couple of years will, they become the sexy team to talk about and stuff. Because look, I'm sitting here listening to Joe Dumars yesterday. The bad boys weren't the pretty, looking team. They were physical. They beat you in different ways. They had their scoring and stuff. But I don't know. I don't know if maybe it's just because it's fresh in my mind. But bad boys in OKC.
Interesting comparison. I think the biggest similarity there is the defense. That's the end of the floor where they're hanging their hat on, and they're just, OKC is swarming you defensively. But yeah, I mean, I'm really curious to see it. Things could change. We've seen this happen a ton, where in the series switches locations, and then the lower seeded team plays better. Maybe Memphis can be more competitive when they play them in Tennessee. But, I mean, right so far it looks like this isn't going to be a huge test for OKC. Yeah. I'm curious, though, as we get to the second and third round, OKC is so young. So, like, the way they got knocked out last year by Dallas in the second round, when you think about it, it shouldn't be that necessarily surprising, because that was really the first time that OKC's been in the playoffs. But I'm curious to see this year, because I think they're a lot better than even they were last year when they were also a 1 seed, to see if they can carry that through and get to the finals. But yeah. I mean, right now, the way that they've played so far, how can you not be extremely impressed?
Mr. Jim Eichenhofer, give a follow on Pelicans.com. We'll see you next time on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.